In this Ultimate Team series, I make the best team I believe possible, picking players from all eras of NBA history. It isn't just about how talented the teams are, but I'm also trying to build teams that would gel and execute well together. Today, we're looking at the Ultimate Pelicans team. Now, in case you didn't know, the Charlotte Hornets and the New Orleans Pelicans have an extremely complicated history. The original Charlotte Hornets were established and first began playing basketball in the 1988-89 season. For nearly a decade and a half, the Hornets competed in Charlotte. But in 2002, the organization relocated to New Orleans due to low attendance in the initial location. For years, this franchise was known as the New Orleans Hornets, but they did spend a short period of time as the Oklahoma City Hornets due to the damage that was caused by Hurricane Katrina. After some time, they returned home and remained as the New Orleans Hornets. But in 2013, the team rebranded and became the New Orleans Pelicans, which is what this organization is to this very day. The entire left side of this column has this as their franchise history. Now in the right column, you have a new Charlotte expansion team that began playing basketball in 2004. This new, completely different organization was able to establish itself in Charlotte because of the void left by the Hornets after they relocated to New Orleans. Now here's where things get really interesting. After the New Orleans Hornets in the left column became the New Orleans Pelicans, the Hornets name and logo were now up for grabs. So in 2014, the Charlotte Bobcats rebranded and became the Charlotte Hornets. So as you can see in these two columns, these are two separate organizations with two different owners and with two different histories. Yet, at different points, each of these organizations were known as the Charlotte Hornets. I know, it feels gross and it's super confusing, but to me, this is the best way to break down these Ultimate teams based on the actual franchises they played for. Before I get started, here are the rules you need to know. To build each franchise's Ultimate team, I will be picking a starting 5, a second unit representing each position, and then 3 additional rotation players at any position I choose. In total, there will be 13 roster spots. It's worth mentioning that I will not simply be building these teams based on how talented each player is, but I'll also be factoring in how well these players would do together as teammates. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting at point guard is one of the greatest that the position has ever seen, Chris Paul. This active legend was at his absolute peak in New Orleans, as he was a dominant two-way force who was a legitimate MVP candidate. He was one of those rare players who actually experienced his prime in his early 20s, and in specifically the 08-09 season, he averaged 23 points, a league-leading 11 assists, and a league-leading 2.8 steals on roughly 50% shooting from the field. At this point in his career, he had almost no weakness. As he could score with the best of them, he could facilitate better than anyone in the league, and he was an absolute pickpocket machine, regularly putting up insane numbers on the defensive end of the floor. Starting as shooting guard is the 6'8" sniper Glenn Rice. Technically, he spent his career as a small forward, but there's a lot of great forwards and not so many elite 2 guards on this all-time squad. So Rice seemed to be one of the players who would make a better fit at the 2 spot. He was an NBA All-Star 3 times in his career, and all 3 times were with this team. Although his prime was short-lived, he was one of the most dangerous players during it, and in 1997 he was even named the All-Star Game's MVP. In the 96-97 season, he averaged about 27 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists on 48% shooting, and an insane 47% from 3-point range, which happened to lead the entire league that season. CP3 will love to kick it out to this guy on the perimeter. Starting as small forward is the 6'10" sharpshooter Peja Stojakovic. His best seasons may have come in Sacramento, but regardless, he was still a lethal perimeter threat in New Orleans. He has pre-existing chemistry with Chris Paul, as the two competed as teammates for one of the best teams in the Western Conference. In the 07 to 08 season, he averaged 16 points and 4 rebounds while hitting 44% of his shots, and a deadly 44% from three-point range. He also shot a career-high 6.8 three-point attempts per game that season. With Paul at the point and with Rice and Peja on the wings, spacing and three-point shooting will be a very difficult task to manage for opposing defenses. Starting at power forward is one of the most skilled bigs that we've ever seen, Anthony Davis. This 6'10 superstar spent his early 20s with the Pelicans, and he was a statistical monster on both ends of the court. In the 2017 to 2018 season, he played a whopping 75 games and put up averages of 28 points, 11 rebounds, and a league-leading 2.6 blocks on 53% shooting from the field. With so much attention going to his perimeter shooting teammates, Davis will have plenty of room to operate in the post with single-man coverage. Starting at center is the NBA Hall of Famer Alonzo Mourning. As a young 6'10 star, Mourning did almost everything for his team, as he was a consistent 2010 guy while being one of the fiercest rim protectors in the entire league, which says a lot considering who his competition was during that era. In his rookie season alone, he was averaging 3.5 blocks per game. The painted area will always be a scary place when Davis and Mourning are on the floor together. Now on to the second unit. The backup point guard is the 6'3 All-Star Baron Davis. This fast point guard was one of the most explosive points of his era, and he was quite the playmaker as well. Beyond that, Davis was usually among the league leaders in steals per game, and he was the leader overall twice. In 2004, he averaged 23 points, 7 assists, and 2.4 steals, while leading New Orleans to the playoffs. He'll be a massive spark of energy and intensity for the second unit. The backup shooting guard is the 6'3 scorer CJ McCollum. He's always a threat with his solid perimeter jump shot, and in the 22 to 23 season, he was third in the team in scoring, averaging about 21 points, 6 assists, and 4 rebounds. Alongside of Baron Davis, he'll do a solid job of keeping the defense honest. The backup small forward is the 6'8 former All-Star Brandon Ingram. Continuing the theme of the second unit so far, Ingram will be a massive boost of offense off the bench. Usually, his biggest obstacle is remaining healthy, but in a reserve role with less minutes, he'll likely be fresh and available when he's called upon. During his first All-Star season in 2020, he averaged roughly 24 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists, while hitting 46% of his shots. The backup power forward is the 6'7 beast Larry Johnson. During the 90s, Johnson was one of the strongest and most athletically gifted players of his size. He was always a sure thing to bring energy and effort to the basketball court, and in 1993 especially, he was an absolute workhorse, as he averaged 22 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 assists, while leading the NBA in minutes per game. With Anthony Davis at the starting position, there will be a more finesse approach. But whenever a more bruising and punishing style of offense is needed, Grandmama will make a great substitution. The backup center is the 6'10 star DemMarcus Cousins. Due to injuries, he didn't play a tremendous amount of games as a Pelican, but for the time he was out there, he was a statistically productive monster. For example, in 48 games of the 17 to 18 season, he averaged 25 points, 13 rebounds, and 5 assists on 47% shooting from the field. Coming off the bench, he'll be a nice change of pace from Mourning, as Boogie will focus more on the offensive end compared to Alonzo, who specialized on the defensive end. Now on to the 3 rotation players. The first is the wildly explosive Zion Williamson. In recent years, he's been getting a bad rap for his inability to stay on the floor due to his health, and for his inability to contain his weight. But when he's actually out there on the court, he's something special to watch. For example, in the 20 to 21 season, he played 61 regular season games, and averaged 27 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists, while hitting a ridiculous 61% of his shots. While he's on the floor with either Chris Paul or Baron Davis, he'll be the recipient of many highlight-worthy lob finishes. The second rotation player is the 6'4" All-Star Jrue Holiday. As most of you know, this fantastic combo guard was a legitimate two-way threat for New Orleans, and in 2019 he produced 21 points, 8 assists, and 5 rebounds, while making 47% of his attempts. His sound decision-making and veteran experience will make him a reliable option in whatever situations he may be needed. The third rotation player and the last spot on this roster goes to the 6'9" power forward David West. He was a two-time All-Star during his time in New Orleans, as his prime perfectly coincided with the prime of Chris Paul. Specifically, in 2008, he averaged about 21 points and 9 rebounds while making 48% of his shots. On a roster that's certainly not lacking in terms of size and strength, David West will certainly make a solid cherry on top. So here's a final look at the complete roster of this Ultimate Pelicans team. I gotta be honest, this team is a lot scarier than I initially expected them to be, as they have elite shooting, solid playmaking, and a tremendous amount of size and strength. They do have some great defenders in Chris Paul, Anthony Davis, Alonzo Mourning, and Jrue Holiday. But outside of those 4 players, there are some weak spots defensively that can be exploited. Regardless, they're going to be a tough out for just about anyone if they end up making it to the Ultimate Western Conference playoffs. Do you think this Pelicans team has a shot at making the playoffs? Also, here's my list of honorable mentions. Should any of these players have made the roster instead? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.